Hello and welcome to the Blood Red Morning Bulletin. I'm your host, David Comerford, and I'm joined by David Lynch this morning. So we're going to start by talking about the World Cup, and then we've got a bit of takeover news to talk about, not only for Liverpool, but also for one of their rivals. But yeah, like I say, beginning with yesterday's World Cup action, one Liverpool player was involved in the form of Ibrahima Konate playing for France in a 4-1 win over Australia. So, David, what did you think of his performance? Because obviously it was a very big occasion for him in his career.
Yeah, it was. I thought an impressive performance. I think it sort of says a lot, really, that he's, about his status and his growing status, really, within the game. That he's coming to that France team now because, it was a bit of a surprise, really, when the news broke earlier this week that he might be in contention to be in the starting lineup. Obviously, France have got an awful lot of talent, well, across the squad entirely, but definitely at centre half. So the competition's really tight there. But I think a similar thing has happened to what happened when he came in at Liverpool, really, where again there's huge competition for places at centre half. But he came in and you think towards the back end of last season, his first season at the club, had basically fought his way into the team to become the first choice partner to Virgil van Dijk. And I think he is that for the remainder of this season as well, if he can stay fit. And I think he's basically done a similar thing at international level. Is Deschamps has seen him in training regularly and thought, this is a player really you can't deny his starting place to. He's too good to leave on the bench, and I think that shows really that he will probably be, particularly as France got underway with a really convincing win, he will probably be in the first choice partnership there for the remainder of the tournament. It's position that he deserves. I know he's still such a young player, but he's already a player for the now, and he's very much worthy of a starting place in the team of world champions. He'll be right up there again, really, with the teams challenging for the trophy.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you make about the training sessions and the way that he will have been able to make an impression there. Probably just by sort of holding his own against obviously some of the attacking talent that they have as well. You mentioned it there in terms of his Liverpool situation and potentially being first choice in the Premier League, which he wasn't last season. But from that point of view, is it as I guess from the Liverpool fan perspective, do we want Konate to be getting this run of games? Because obviously he's not really played this season. So do we look at it and think, sort of rhythm and confidence, or is it again a case of you're a bit worried about picking up an injury, especially because we've seen how impactful he can be for this side?
I think you've got to grasp the positives in a season where he hasn't played an awful lot. As you say, I think looking at the fact that he is going to get minutes in his legs, he's going to get some sharpness off this, hopefully get some confidence as well by going deep in the tournament. All those factors are major positives. I think, if you'd played a lot of football up to this point, then you would be concerned about the potential for injuries and maybe, too many minutes and that leading to fatigue, which obviously then tends to lead to fitness issues. I think Liverpool will just have to look at it as positives. And at the end of the day, they have no choice over this anyway. It's, one of those things about having a player who's good enough to represent their international team, that they're going to play, they're going to get used. You do think Deschamps, maybe he will be careful with him in a situation where, France win the first two group games and they know that they're through. You'd like to think the manager there would, especially with the number of options he's got in that position, and they're all very high quality, that he would maybe, look to rotate for that third group game and give Konate a rest to bring him back in for the knockouts. But as I say, Liverpool got no control over that, so they're just going to have to seize on the positives from it, which is hopefully that they get a confident and fully fit Konate coming back from the World Cup.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with sort of Iran and how the sort of fitness situation develops and how those two centre-back slots go as well, because obviously if France are going to make a deep run into the tournament, there's going to be players challenging for those positions. So as far as I'm aware, there's no Liverpool players in action today at the World Cup. One player that would have been, had he been selected, is Thiago. Obviously a huge boost for Liverpool that he isn't playing for Spain, but quite a baffling decision, surely, because it has to be considered one of the best sort of central midfield players in Europe.
Yeah, really sort of difficult to get your head around. I mean, I can understand maybe, Luis Enrique not wanting to rely on him in terms of in the long term around a World Cup and saying maybe he's not in his first choice 11 because, he has had those injury problems. There is so much value in looking towards the future with this team, particularly when you've got two incredible talents like Gavi and Pedri coming through, and they coming through in that central midfield position. I do, understand maybe why he's not going to be one of the first names on the team sheet, but to not include him in the squad just is remarkable, really. I think a player who, nearly had a clean sweep of trophies for Liverpool last season and was an absolutely major part of that. It wasn't like he was just being dragged along for the ride. He was a huge player for Liverpool in that run. I just can't understand what the manager has seen there to think that he's not worthy of a place in the squad. I mean, there are some players in that Spain squad. For example, I know for a fact that Thiago is a better player than Koke, who, I think Koke is a fantastic player, had a great career, but in terms of sheer talent, and there's nothing he missed there from Thiago either. I think, one of the big challenges he had when he came to Liverpool was to show that he could fit into that pressing football, that he could do the hard work to go with, the obvious talent he's got with the ball at his feet. And I think he's answered those questions emphatically, really. Is, there's no worries about him on the defensive side of the game. So it's just really, really difficult to understand. And I saw an interview, and you may have seen it, with Tomiyasu, the Japan player, and then Arsenal. And the shock he had that when he learned that Thiago wasn't in the squad, he just assumed he would be. And I think everyone would think like that, because why would you leave a player of such talent at home when you're looking to win a major tournament? It's a difficult one to get your head around.
Yeah, and that shows, I suppose, how difficult he is to play against it. And even if you're not going to start Thiago, I feel like there are very few players I'd rather be able to call upon from the bench in terms of being able to sort of manage a game. But moving away from the World Cup now, and onto some news around the Liverpool takeover. There was a report from the Echo that senior figures at Anfield were stunned when the news about FSG being willing to sell the club broke on the 7th of November. FSG kind of wanted to keep it quiet, and then obviously the Athletic broke the story. What do you make of that? I think maybe there's an acceptance that this kind of thing's always going to get out eventually, but would FSG have possibly preferred it during the World Cup? Because obviously there was still, I think, a couple of games to go before that news actually surfaced.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of talk at the time. I saw a lot of people on social media suggesting, they've considered this is the right time to leak this news. And, I'd like to push back on that idea, because this is very much, I think that report is spot on in terms of that they would have preferred to keep this quiet. The only reason that this news emerged at the time, as you say, is because of that excellent report from the Athletic coming out. I don't think this is something they wanted to share. And I think there is that disconnect between FSG and senior figures at Liverpool in terms of, okay, they like to keep things running smoothly in terms of how they work, and they work well together. But in terms of things like this, big picture things, there is a disconnect, and FSG would have really liked to have sort of kept this process in-house for as long as possible. I think they're not absolutely devastated that the news is out there in terms of what that will mean for attracting alternative investment and creating hope. They will hope a little bit of a bidding war for the club. So, they could have shut it down and maybe lied about it, but I think they decided once it was put to them that the Athletic had learned that they were going to sell the club, then I think, they weren't in the mode to sort of deny it. But yeah, not something they wanted to put out there instantly. And maybe not even during the World Cup. Maybe would have kept it in the hat for a little longer, explored their options through those two banks, and maybe got into a position where they knew they had a few bidders lined up and could do that process sort of quietly. But obviously that hasn't happened, and you're going to get interest from elsewhere now. But maybe FSG can work that in the favour, and as I say, use that to sort of create a bidding war, because the word is definitely out there now that Liverpool Football Club is for sale, and I think that can only be handy for them.
And I think one of the interesting things in that Athletic report was how FSG sort of replied to it and clarified that it wasn't necessarily going to be a full sale, that it might have just been new investors. So, I think the report kind of led with the angle that the club was up for sale and was going to be sold, but maybe pushing back on that a little bit, just trying to control that narrative. But just to touch on, I suppose, Man United, obviously that was big news last night about the Glazers. It can't be coincidental, really, the timing with Liverpool. So that's the first element. But also we've got a comment from Jono here saying, do FSG need to be more urgent with the sale because the same buyers will be looking at Man United, which doesn't seem like, it seems like that could be a possibility. The clubs are presumably fairly similar in value and in appeal at the moment. So do you think that that's going to have to be a consideration now?
I think there's such, it's so rare that an asset like this comes on the market. I don't feel, and there's such great interest around it. We saw with the Chelsea sale, obviously the circumstances around that were slightly different in terms of the timescale, and they had to get that done quickly. But we saw there was an incredible amount of interest in the club, which I do think has influenced the timing of both Liverpool and Manchester United in terms of, wanting to sell up now. But I don't think the two sales should affect each other too much. I think, Manchester United is obviously maybe possibly the jewel in the crown, really, in terms of English football. Will be seen, and I think Liverpool is not too far behind in terms of that. And so, yeah, maybe we'll attract some similar interest, but only one can win the bidding war for either. So it's, it's so rare and such an opportunity that I don't think they'll have too great an effect on each other in terms of, this is going to take X amount of people out of the bidding for Liverpool because Manchester United is now suddenly up for sale. And I certainly don't think it's going to, make FSG feel like they need to rush themselves. I think there is anyway that time pressure from outside. I think, someone I spoke to this week sort of suggested to me that some people they've been speaking to about potentially being interested in the club have said that they'd like to get things done by Christmas, which is seen as a completely unrealistic timescale within Liverpool, or certainly will be a very difficult push to get it done in that sort of time. But I think that, like I said, that shows you really that the urgencies from outside, that people who are interested in buying Liverpool, they want to get it done anyway because they want to fight off other potential interest, and they know that interest is huge. So, I don't think it can be done that quickly, but I think anyway, people will want to get it done quickly because they want to get hold of Liverpool, and the same will go for Manchester United. No one wants to be involved in a long drawn out process because that just makes it more difficult to get over the line. It attracts other interests. So, I think there may be not a hugely quick resolution, but a quickish resolution to this situation.
Yeah, and from the Liverpool point of view, I guess you hope for that because even if FSG aren't necessarily people who would pour money into the club in ordinary circumstances anyway, you don't want the instability of being up for sale kind of hanging over the club for an extended period of time. But yeah, that is going to do us for this morning. Thanks very much, David. Remember to check out all the written content that goes up on liverpool.com today, and check back here tomorrow morning for our next stream. But yeah, until then, enjoy the rest of your day and take care.